I first got involved with art. Um, I mean, I'd say when I was younger in like elementary school, I just always sketched. I always just sketched and doodled. Didn't think much of it. Um, but I would say a turning point for me was sometime in middle school, like eighth grade. Um, a lot of kids were kind of in this place of drawing like superheroes, Dragon Ball Z, big muscular dudes. So I was really into that as well. And it was one day I got called out at a lunch table or either on the bus or something. And this kid held up my drawing next to his and said, "You will never draw this good." And he was better than me. Like I wasn't like as good as everybody else by far. I was like decent at best. Um, I like to color my stuff in, and I think that's what set me apart. They just stick with black and white. I would color it in, but I wouldn't draw as well as they did. So
That's
when he called me out, that was like a for like 2 days I was just depressed. I was like, man, I'll never be that good. But then it was like something rose up inside me, and then I started asking around to all the kids who I knew who drew better than me, and I asked them how often they drew, and they'd say like I drew 3 days a week, once a week. When I feel like it, somebody said 5 days a week, and I said, well, okay, well if I draw every day, then maybe by the time I'm 30, I'll be better than them. That was my thought process, and so I just started drawing every day, and I mean I just improved rapidly, and then that's when I developed my love for it. Um, I think it's one of those things that your ground gets more solid every year as you continue to think. I think purpose is not really a destination. It's more like a process. It's more like a race. As you get closer to the finish line, you start to see the finish line. So for in the beginning, you don't even see it, how far this thing is. But as you keep going, it's almost like you get closer and closer, and you see the flag in the distance, and you start realizing, oh, in this direction over there, that's how I'll get to, I guess so your self actualization about what your work is about. But to be specific about when that was for me, um, it would have to be somewhere around the time my father had passed away in 2012. Um, I was going to church at that time, and I was more spiritual, but right before he got very ill, I kind of just inside myself was just made like a commitment to God, and I said, I really want to be more like the things I'm hearing at church and not like a hypocrite. I didn't want to just say I go to church and do it as a ritual. I wanted to really live it. And so, I used to drink, I used to, smoke recreationally, not cigarettes. And that's who I was at that time, just really loose. And I remember just wanting to be more strict and being like, well, if the Bible says, be holy, do that. So when my father was in a coma for 6 months, and I could tell you, I never wanted to. That was the time I wanted to drink and smoke more than any time, but I didn't do it. And I remember what kind of kept me comforted is that I would read the Bible to my dad while he was, sleeping, and I just read that to him every day. And cause I just believe like, he could wake up, he could be healed. And even though it didn't turn out that way, that time of me reading every day, what I didn't realize is that that was doing something inside of me where I was becoming what I aimed to become. And so, after he passed away, I just had this peace about it. And I just found like this new inner strength that I never had before. And so at that point is when I made the decision that I wanted to, dedicate my artwork and my purpose to just being about my faith in God. And um, didn't want to be outwardly overt about it because that's not what got me saved. I never really cared for people who were like, let me pray with you, brother. Let me do that. I just thought that was too much. So I wanted to do it in a way that could reach somebody in stages and doses, kind of like how it reached me. And so a lot of my artwork has layers of that meaning behind it. And whether people get deep into it or not, I just want them to just appreciate it and start to think about God, if anything. Yeah, so any portrait I do, especially now, I have to just kind of feel spiritually led to do it. I don't like to just say, oh, that'd be a good person to do. Let me just do it. I kind of like just pray about it, get quiet, and just let that person kind of be revealed to me. It's almost like I could be in a crowd of people or in a room, and I might know that person, I might not know them, but just one day, like I'll just see this, I'll just get a vibe from them, and just like intuition, like I think that's the person I'm gonna use. But what I'll have ahead of time is like ideas. I have ideas of a series I'm working on, an idea of a process that just a subject. It's almost like in Hollywood, if you have a script, you have a movie, and then you need to find the actors and you do a casting call. It's like when I see that person, I'll be like, that's the person for this script. That's the person for this role. And it's like, so then it's not really a portrait of them. It's more so like they're becoming this character. But what has happened, because I'm really strict about making sure it's something I'm not like just doing because it's a good idea, but something I feel internal motivation to do. Because I do it that way, as I talk to the person and get to know them on the day of the photo shoot, on the day of sketching them, I find out that they were like born for that role. Every time without fail. At this point, I would say, can I say two?
Sure, of course.
In third grade, he was the best person at drawing. And he was popular anyway. So he was a kid that could do backflips and all this stuff. And so he was like really cool with everybody. And he just could draw amazing. And I remember just being, and when I first saw him draw, I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. Let me do that. Cause I didn't know about art history. My parents weren't artists. I wasn't exposed to that. And then in middle school, I had a friend, Mel Vaughn. She was the only person I knew that drew realistic portraits, at that time. And so I was like, wow, how is she doing that? And so, I remember in high school, this guy, Philip, he was the guy that was the best in the class. And it was like, man, if I could just draw like that. So I would say the peers around me, kids my age or people I saw drawing, it was just something about seeing somebody work on something and it come out awesome. That just planted a seed. I was like, oh, I want to do that so bad. And, you know, it's that goal, that passion of seeking after it really made a difference. I would say from an artist standpoint, who influences me the most is his name is Henry O. Tanner, Henry Ossawa Tanner. He's like, late in the 1800s, 1900s, like 1890 something is when he kind of was in his prime, I believe. Um, he was he was African American, and he was so talented. And he was under one of these great master artists named Thomas Eakins, who was an American painter. And he was so good that Thomas was like, this is my favorite student of all time, like hands down. And he got a lot of accolades from his peers, but because of racism and injustice, he didn't get any good shows, any good opportunities in America. So he had to go to Europe in order to grow his career. So that was inspiring to me. But what really struck me about him was, um, coincidentally, I actually found out about him in high school. We had to pick names from a hat, and the project was we had to do paintings based off of a person in this hat. And that was the person, and we had a class of 20, and that was the person who I picked from the hat. And that's how I first found out about him. But it wasn't until, after my dad passed and I was becoming more spiritual, that I went back and looked him up, and I realized almost all his work were Bible scenes. And I didn't know it, but it was like, when you look at his work, you don't know that it's a Bible scene unless you read the title. It's just like a painting, it's like a guy around some lions. You're like, oh wait, that's the guy in the lion, that's Daniel in the lion den. There was one he painted of an angel where it's like, you look at it, it's a woman like just contemplating, this beam of light is hitting her. And you don't realize that's an angel till you read it, like, oh, that's the angel telling her she's gonna be the mother of God. That I was like, oh my gosh, he had this thing hidden the whole time and I couldn't see it. And so that kind of inspired me to go in a direction like, that's how you do it. God doesn't beat people over the head, he whispers. And he does it in stages. And so I just thought he was just like amazing at that. And so that probably is who influences my artist purpose or my artist vision the most. School's great because it's almost like you get to skip ahead. Like what would have taken you 8 years, you could probably get in 1 year, because you're just around all these people that are just in this creative place. You're learning so many tips and tricks and techniques from your peers, from your teachers. And it's just so much I learned. I would say one thing that's sticking out to me now though is I really learned how to kind of like you know, go with what's inside your heart, what's in your spirit, like walk with that. Don't just do what everybody else is doing. And the way I learned that was there was this, I went to VCU and the degree I got was in communication arts. That's basically illustration.
Oh.
I went to school for illustration because I didn't like fine art. I thought fine art was weird. I thought, I don't want to be on no weird stuff. I don't want to be wearing potatoes on my head. Like I just wanted to do, I wanted to draw and I wanted to get better at drawing. And I felt like that department would teach me the most about that. And it did.
Mhm.
But the whole time I was making fine art as my projects. And I didn't make the connection that, oh, I'm gonna be a fine artist, even though I didn't go to school for that. So in that department, everybody, when they finished, they went to this place called the Illustration Academy. I don't even know if it's still around, but for like 10 years, every kid who was at the top of this department said, "Oh, I'm going to the academy." Everyone goes to the academy. You come out, you're like on beast mode. You're just doing it. And I was like, man, I gotta go. I gotta go. I want to be where everybody else was the best. I want to go there. And so I had a mentor, Alex Bostic, who worked there at that time. I was like, I wanted to go so bad, and my parents couldn't afford it. And so my roommate went. And so that summer I was depressed. I was like, man, he's at the academy. He's gonna come back. He's gonna just mop the floor with me. He's gonna be so much better. And I was so upset. And but I got a scholarship that the next year. So here it is in the next summer. I just graduated and I'm like, I'm gonna go to the academy. My mentor said, Stanley, don't go to that place. I was like, some of your colleagues teach there. Why would you tell me not to go where some of your coworkers work at? He said, Stanley, don't do that crap. I was like, crap? How you gonna go? And I was just like so hard headed. I was arguing with him, and he was like, Stanley, do not do that. And so he said, why do you want to go? I was like, well, everybody goes. Da, da. He's like, and I said, how much do they pay? I was like, it's like $8,000. Da, da. I was like, and you got $5,000. So you gonna take out a loan for $3,000? I was like, yeah, because it's worth. He's like, okay, why would you? And so he just was just grilling me about why am I going? And I just was like, I was just standing firm, like I'm gonna go. And they said, Stanley, find something that's more what you're, where you're going in your work. And so I was like, no, I can't. I said, my roommate went, and he said, okay, did he come back better? I was like, well, not so much. He said, what did you do that summer? I was like, well, you gave me 5 projects to do and, work my butt off and do that. And then he said, okay, what were the 5 projects? And I told him, and one of them was a painting I did of my father. And so at that time, that painting had just got me like semifinalists in the national portrait competition. And so that was a huge deal around the school, around everybody, every place. Like, wow, Stanley as a youngster is in this like national professional competition. And as a 4, I found out I won second place. So the fact it went that far, the way he got me was he was like, okay, what did he do? He said, what did you do? I said, I did 5 paintings. He said, okay, where did one of them go? I was like, okay. So instead of going there to Illustration Academy, I listened and I went to this school in New York that taught workshops, Grand Central Academy. It was like a atelier school. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. And they taught like classical realism, like realistic drawing and painting at a high level, kind of like they used to teach old masters back in the day. And that place was the best place for me. I came back on beast mode after that. I came back, the work looked way better, and it just was no comparison. And I mean, and because that place was it was even cheaper than an illustration academy. If I'm not mistaken, an illustration academy, you stay there for 10 or 15 days. It's like $8,000. With this scholarship I got for $5,000, I got to stay in New York for 3 months. And I was in New York by myself for 3 months taking courses, and that was like a much better use of my time. So I just would say that, like, you got to follow your heart. You got to follow, look around you, look at what's working. Don't try to do what everyone else is doing because that, not everybody's built for the crowds, and I'm not one of those people. I got to do my own thing. I remember a big turning point for me after, and I'm so I'm in 8th grade. I'm trying to draw every day, and it's like 2 years, 3 years before I really feel like the improvement ever meant anything. Like it ever really changed what was around me. So what I mean by that is I knew I was improving. My teachers could see I'm improving, but when I showed my sketchbooks to people, I would always get the same response, like, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, all right." And it's like, and I would still get laughed at sometimes. Like I would still like have these moments where I remember in 10th grade, same thing happened. This kid who didn't draw, me and my friend Melvon, she drew this, we actually drew the same picture of the same person, same celebrity. And I was like, "You know who I drew yesterday? I drew such and such." I was like, "Yo, me too. I drew him yesterday." So we were like, "Let me see." And so this kid, loudmouth kid, walks up. He looks at it. He's like, "Oh, y'all having a drawing contest? Let me see." He holds it up. He's like, "Yo, look at how much better hers is than Stanley's." And I remember, and everybody was like laughing in the class. I was like, "Oh my God." And I would get that for like years until like maybe like my junior, senior year. It's like something clicked, or a lot of things clicked, but it's like I just got good enough to the point that now people are like, "Oh, wow. How'd you do that? Man, that looks like a photo." Like the comments changed, not that that's what I'm doing it for, but I noticed that was like, okay, that's when it changed. But at that point, I probably could have like been like, okay, I've achieved what I want to achieve. But I remember I was in this National Art Honor Society thing in school, and I remember this lady was giving us like this induction ceremony. I don't know who they found. It was some like poetry pottery person, and I didn't know who she was, but she just had this quirkiest things about her. But I remember we kind of sat there in silence. She said, close your eyes, and I want you to think about your art." And I remember she said something in the speech, but it stuck with me. She's like, "Your art, if you let it, it'll become like a rock for you, become an escape for you, become a place where it's more important and personal to you than anything else, and it'll provide protection. It'll provide like it'll be like your own sanctuary. All you got to do is just embrace it with all that you have, all your heart." There's just stuff like that. And I remember for some reason I couldn't shake that. And as I've gotten older, I realized like, it's no longer just something I love. It's something I need. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not like how I feel about God, but it's definitely up there with like, if I couldn't draw anymore, I'd be really sad. I really would. And I didn't feel that way about it back then. But as I've kept going, I mean, if I had all the money in the world, I would still do it, because I just love it. And so um, I think last thing that I say this to all every time I've taught a class and kids are like learning or beginning, or it could be adults I'm teaching, and they'll say the same thing like, "I don't know, I just am not that good. I don't know if I can ever be that good." And I was like, "Well, what if I paid you $1 million every day for you to do your best, your absolute best? Well, you would do it, right?" They were like, "Yeah, that's $1 million." Like, I'm like, "Yeah." So if you did it every day for 5 years, you got paid bank every day for 5 years, and you drew your very best. After about 5 years, you probably could sell something. Wouldn't you say so? If you did something, I say, "Yeah, I think so." Well, I was like, "Well, you couldn't pay me enough not to draw every day." So, just think of it. Just if you keep doing it, give it your best, you'll get there. And that's with anything in life. Someone paid you, you would do it. But if you got real passion, they couldn't pay you not to do it.